Hey, how you doing? This is Travis Crow at Skaha Lake Middle School in Penticton. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to make longboards and skateboards today. I've been making both for close to 10 years now, and it's made my program. Students come into our school and they are excited about it until the chance that they get to make them. And we have in Penticton lots of beaches and outdoor stuff. So the longboard skateboard stuff really kind of lends itself to that. There's a pretty good skate culture at our school and in our town. So it's an easy sell to the kids. If you're looking to impress this upon parents and administrators, I sell longboards and skateboards for $35 out of my shop right now, and it just depends on how much the material costs me. I've just had to up it from 30 to 35, and I'm just covering my material costs with that. I want to get these things into kids' hands for as cheaply as possible. There's some mental health and stress relief and physical fitness stuff involved with this project as well that you can help to sort of sell it to other parties if you need to. Cost out of a shop for a longboard deck or a skateboard deck, we're talking about $100 and up just to start. So really good value to kids. Something that some of our students couldn't probably afford otherwise. So it's great that we can pass that on to kids, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm going to go through this step by step, and we'll learn about how to make these things.
All right, here's most of the tracers that we're using here in the shop. You can see that we have a whole range of sizes and shapes. Some of these go with some molds that I did buy early on, but what's happened more often lately is a kid will have an idea for a board and we'll just design it ourselves, or somebody will have a longboard, they'll bring it in, they'll trace it, and we will cut it out, and we have ourselves a tracer. The nice part about most of these tracers is they go along with, we can use the same mold for a few of these different tracers. It's not often the students here, they're pretty new to longboarding usually and skateboarding usually, so they don't really have a preference as far as things go. They're just doing it, picking stuff based on what they think is cool or what they think that they're going to like to ride. So after they've picked the tracer that they're going to use, I'm going to give them their materials, and here's a good quality maple ply, 16th maple ply. It's really thinner, a little bit thinner than that. Purchased off AuroraRocket.com. This is 1/8 inch birch ply that I purchased at Windsor Plywood in town here. For the longboards, we use the maple ply top and bottom, and then the birch ply is the core of our boards. I've been able to save some costs by doing that. If you're looking for something a little bit more exotic, here's a layer of bamboo, also purchased off AuroraRocket.com, and then we have some dyed layers as well. And you can see that the student that I have right now, this is going to be their bottom layer. I've cut some pieces into strips, and then they've traced, and they'll cut that out, and that'll be their bottom layer. It cuts really well, and then sands up real nice. Looks real good, and a nice way to sort of personalize the board. For students that are a little bit older, I'd say that'd be maybe an opportunity for some marquetry, but the students that's a little bit too much for the students that I teach here at the middle school. For skateboards, we go 7 plies and all maple with 2 cross grain layers here. That's what a cross grain layer looks like. So 7 layers for skateboards of just the maple ply, and then 3 layers of the birch 1/8" plywood sandwiched inside for longboards. Okay, so students will pick a tracer and they will trace the deck on all of their layers, and then we will go over and we will use the bandsaw to cut these out. The nice thing about cutting out individual layers is we can keep the top guide real low, so there isn't a lot of exposure, which is safe for the students. And if they mess up on one layer, it's no big deal. And it doesn't have the curve in it yet. It's not concave. The students, they seem to have a tough time cutting things out once the wood is bent, whereas with the plies not glued yet, they're flat on the table, and it makes it easier for the kids to cut them out. Lots of practice means lots of practice with the bandsaw, which is really excellent as well. One thing to take note of is that students, because we're cutting out such thin material, there's a high-pitched whiny sound, and that seems to be a little bit intimidating to some of the students. So what I'll do is I'll spend some time with them. Usually I'll just hang out. I've got 4 bandsaws here, and I'll just hang out in the middle here while students get going cutting their first couple layers. And by the end of the second layer, they seem to have a good handle on it. Another thing to watch out for is I get kids to make lots of relief cuts around the ends, but for the long sides, for the straight cuts, sort of for along this long side here, no relief cuts are really necessary, but students will start by making an inside cut instead of an outside cut. They won't turn the layer enough to get that outside cut, and they struggle just to get started with that, so you might have to guide them a little bit there. Okay, here's some examples of some of the molds that we have. We got a regular skate deck mold, then we have sort of a traditional surfboard shape longboard mold, and those were both purchased off of RoarRocket.com. You can see where we had some issues right here with some glue sticking and broke the mold, but you know, with high density foam, it's nice. We're able to just glue it with wood glue and shape it with wood tools, so we were able to fix that problem. Here's some molds that were actually made here at the school just using high density foam, blue foam. You can use wood tools to do all the shaping that goes along with these, and we've actually stopped. The molds can be purchased fairly inexpensively, but we're making our molds these days, and if any student comes up with a new shape or we need to make a new mold, I just give them a piece of blue foam, and we go from there. And the nice thing about the blue foam is if they mess up, we just give them another piece. You know, you could if you have any friends in the industry, you can ask around on a job site. You can find offcuts of this stuff pretty inexpensively, and it's relatively inexpensive to purchase as well. It does make a mess, and I do ask that the students who are making the molds to wear a mask while they're doing it, so they're not breathing that stuff in. Okay, glue up. So once these layers are cut out, and you can see, just to get the most out of my material, I've actually had pieces that are cut out of sort of an offcut of one of my pieces. If this happens, there's no structural issues. This glues up and is real strong. I've never had a board separate at a seam like that, so it's never been a problem. So just to get the most out of your material. Tight Bond 3 is the adhesive that we're using, and I just put it in a Gatorade bottle like so. We're using a foam roller to roll this out. And I'm using somewhere in between 1/3 of a cup to 1/4 cup per layer in between each one. And just depending on the size of the board. And you don't want to starve that thing. You want to make sure that there's enough glue on that whole thing, and that glue is all rolled out really well to the edges. So what'll happen here is, I'm not going to actually do it, but we will put the glue out, and I'm at a point where I have a pretty good idea but from pouring it from the bottle, because I had so much experience with this project. Next layer goes, we roll that out. Next layer goes on, and we repeat that process until we have glue in between all of the layers. Now, for the longboards, I do just one gluing. For skateboards, we're talking about a bit of a bigger bend, and what I'll do is I'll glue the first 4 layers, make sure that everything is looking good in the vacuum press, and then I'll go back before the end of the day and glue the last 3 layers just to make sure that everything's gluing up really nice and proper. All right, vacuum press. I have 2 vacuum press units, and they're both purchased for less than $500 from veneersupplies.com. You can see that just to save space here, I've got two bags that I've actually cut out of one larger bag, and that seems to work really well just with the space that I have here. I've re-glued that with it was pool repair epoxy, I do believe, that I used to reseal that bag afterwards. The platens underneath, just to help circulate the air, are made of 3/4 inch MDF, and that's just run through the table saw. Those reliefs are maybe about an 1/8 inch deep. So after we've glued up over here, the layers are going to go on top of the mold, and you can see, as I mentioned before, we're making a penny board here. So I can use a larger mold for one of our other longboards to make that penny board. I'll put elastic bands on, just big heavy elastic bands, to make sure that's not going to slide around on me too much while I'm putting that into the vacuum press. And I find that some of the breather netting that you get out there is not that great. This is actually door screen that I've just purchased from Home Hardware, and it works really, really well. Now, these vacuum presses are continuous run vacuum presses, so I turn them on and they stay on until I'm finished gluing up the longboard. So these will stay on overnight. It seems to me that the continuous run work better than maybe one that you're just sucking the air out of the bag and then just leaving it just in case there's a small puncture in the bag or something like that. So what'll happen is layers go on top with the elastic bands, breather netting goes on top, and then it goes inside the bag and we seal up the bag. Now, I'll watch these and watch really closely to make sure that everything looks good while the air is being sucked out of them. And you know, if I need to adjust something, I'll pull them out of the bag and I'll adjust it, and then I'll put it back in. Don't leave that in there if it's slid on you a little bit, or if things don't look quite right. Pull it out, have a look at it, and get it back in there so everything's lined up really, really well. This process I monitor. Well, I do this bit, and the students help me. And I didn't mention this before, but the glue up I monitor pretty closely as well, because you want to make sure that it's not starved, and that there isn't a glue mess afterwards as well, I guess. Once the board comes out of the vacuum press, these are the only two tools I really need to finish cleaning the edges of this thing up. So I've got a combination file here with a flat side and a half round. And I'll use that more sort of around the ends, but to start off with, to shape the long sides of both, a sharp hand plane really does a very good job, and can actually happen really quite quickly. So we'll shape, I'll start by, or I'll get the kids to start shaping the sides first, and then we'll work on the ends after. Now, one thing to watch out for is we're always draw filing. Okay, I've got my hand on the camera. Normally I would have two hands on this file, but we're going to shape in this sort of direction here. We're not going to go straight perpendicular to the layers, because what can actually happen is we can actually split the layers, especially when they're uneven right to begin with. So we really need to make sure that we're draw filing all the way around the edge, and you can't stress that enough to the kids. Just while we're on the subject, belt sanders, disc sanders to try and shape this thing, no. What'll happen is you'll be okay for a little bit, and then you'll catch a layer and pop, you've split the layers. So tell the kids, I've got a kid every once in a while that'll try and sneak in there because they've gotten tired and want to speed up the process. But for sure, please don't do that. Now you can see that there's a fair bit of cleanup to do here. I'll pull this out of the vise, and you can see that this student, struggled a little bit with cutting the ends off of this on the bandsaw. I'll actually help a little bit by grabbing the tracer again and retracing and just trimming the ends for the kids. And there's some kids that are, some students that are strong enough to do this as well. But I'll help this student out just by trimming those ends. This is something that I'll talk about to students while they're cutting these out on the bandsaw, is the better job you do cutting out your layers, the less work that you're going to have to do a little bit later on. But this board, even though the students struggle a little bit with getting everything even, it's going to clean up just fine, and it's going to look great when we're finished. So after we've finished cleaning up those edges, we'll do a palm sand top and bottom to finish cleaning up that board, and hand sandpaper to finish around the edges. And then I have a template here. It's just a longer piece of MDF. It's actually broken off on the end here, and I need to make myself a new one, but it's got the spacing for trucks on it for a number of different boards here, you can see. So I actually do this bit, and I'll mark the holes. And then students will punch the holes with a punch, and then drill the holes. I think it's I want to say it's a 3/16 drill bit, and then those holes need to be countersunk as well. But I mark out the holes for the kids because you don't want a board that's going to wander to the left or to the right, and you want those fairly centered in the middle of the board. On to finishing. So currently I'm using poly blend, a third, boiled linseed oil, polyurethane, and paint thinner. And that's just wiped on with a lint-free cloth, and 2 to 3 layers of that, and it actually does a really nice finish. It's economical, it's easy to for the kids to use. It doesn't bubble. If you wanted to get an even finer finish, you could up the layers that you put on there, and maybe a bit of a sand in between. But it seems to do the nicest finish for the economy. I've played a lot with other finishes, and honestly they're just way too expensive, or they just don't look that great. Okay, so from there, the board is ready to be gripped, and you can see that trucks are almost on this board. We got another board here that it's ready to go for trucks as well. I purchased grip tape in the roll, and I'll just roll out a piece, cut it to size, and the students will put it on. You can see it's just like a big sticker. So you'll roll it out, and you'll pull the sticker off, you'll stick it on, burnish the edge, and you can just cut it with a sharp utility knife.
Okay, I think that's it. One last thing I'd like to mention is that, I teach middle school kids and not a lot of life experience there, and they don't know quite how things can go sideways. So we actually do a lot here at the school on helmet safety, and I'm a big advocate for that for students. I don't know what's going on in our culture right now, but it doesn't seem cool to wear a helmet. But it seems to me that there's lots of new things coming out about concussions and safety as far as protecting our brains are concerned in some other sports. And I hope that we see some trickle over effect into some of the skate culture, because I honestly feel very responsible for the students that I teach, and I want them to stay safe. And their skills aren't all that great with the boards often quite yet. And traffic can be a real issue. There's not always motorists looking out for those young people out there. So please, it would be great that you could stress this with whoever you are passing this on to as well. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, my email address is tkroshinsky@summer.com. I'll spell that TKROSCHINSKY@summer.com. So if there was any details that I've missed or anything else you want to bounce off me, or if you're looking for where I'm purchasing some of this stuff, then please fire me an email and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, thanks for watching.